Hannah, who are you?
Who am I? Oh my, your questions. Okay, right into it. Mm.
Present day Hannah.
I'm a part of life. I'm an intrinsic part of life. I am a being connected to all of nature and all of humanity. I do my best to be a good person. I do my best to listen to my body and for that to be the compass that guides me through my life and my work. I'm a dancer. I'm a poet. I'm a somatic practitioner. Yeah, and I'm a part of all of life.
Mm. I mean, my eyes are already watering and we haven't even started really. So for everyone listening, this is the second conversation with Hannah. For longtime listeners, you might recognize her beautiful. I mean, it's no surprise she's a poet. I was going to say her beautiful poetic voice. We've had a chat. I think it's been a couple of years now, and it was called. I'll put it in the show notes. But the power of dance and movement in processing trauma and identity shifts with Hannah Blake. And I have to say, I remember when you answered the "Who am I?" Question live when we were recording the first interview, and I said something to the effect of, I think I've asked hundreds of people at that point the same question, and it was your response was one of the most kind of moving,
Mm.
uh, answers I've ever heard, and I'm looking at because I listened to how you answered it the first time. And there's just I'm not surprised, but there's a beautiful just, similarity of, like, your core identity and how you just answered because you said,
Yeah.
"Every day you're an extension of nature, my body, and, you are a s s the" what did you say? "And seed of an observer, identifying with your body, and, um, your spirit touches your body and so forth, and this is how you're kind of connected to the entire world." But it really all started with this extension of nature, which
Mm.
is, of course, how you just brought it all together. And then at the time as well that you had felt this deep sense of contentment,
Mm.
at that point, in your life. So it's just beautiful to be here behind the mic with you. I mean, so much has transpired since our first conversation, not just for I don't think just for us independently, but us as friends as well. We've
Yeah.
become, good friends, which I'm really grateful for. And just seeing your work evolve and you and your journey, it's just been a real blessing. So I thought it'd be a beautiful time in space to bring you back and have this conversation to share what you're up to and also give us some guidance too through your practices, because I
Mm.
mean, it's like, there's never a shortage of craziness in this world, and,
Yeah.
we could use some reframes and perspective shifts and, somatic practices and so forth just to, I think, recenter and ground as well. So, all that to say, thank you for coming back, Hannah.
Mm. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be back, and I'm also so grateful for the deepening of our friendship. And yeah, just love conversations with you on and off the mic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so for those just who have not heard the first conversation, and for those who have, I mean, it's been some time just to give them a bit of a refresher, because I don't want to cover all of the backstory we did last time, but just to bring people up to speed, like kind of what's your origin story in the sense of how you got to the place that you are today? I mean, that's a hard thing
Yeah.
to ask someone, but what's the what's the book back summary of Hannah's life?
I will try to give cliff notes of my entire life
Sure.
from birth to this moment. Um,
Yeah.
so biggest piece that feels important to start with is that I grew up as a professional dancer in a family in the entertainment industry, and until about 16 was really committed to walking that path. My mentor, amazing woman, my angel, Debbie Allen, was the cultural ambassador at the time, took me to the Middle East on a cultural bridging initiative, and it completely changed my life and my relationship with dance. And so instead of pursuing dance as a performer, I decided to study essentially the body as a tool for cultural bridging and personal and collective healing. That led me
Mm,
on a pretty amazing path to understanding the world of somatic psychology, which is the body as the subconscious mind, how the body stores memory on a neuropeptide level in our cells, our nervous system, our tissues, our organs. And soon after graduating from college, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and it was scary and also one of the greatest gifts of my life because it held me accountable to testing what I'd learned in my own life and also in my academic career on my own body. And through that process of healing myself, I created a somatic healing method called SOM Maya that I've been taking around the world. And also throughout my life, I've been pretty obsessed with consciousness exploration and non-ordinary states of consciousness through plant allies like psilocybin, ayahuasca, San Pedro, and also animal allies like bufo. And those journeys were incredibly catalytic in not just my healing, but what I like to call my return to wholeness, which I see as a
mm.
return to like the self beyond the self, which is a return to plug back into the heartbeat of nature. And it's a return and remembrance of our intrinsic connection with all of life and all of humanity. And so for the last 8, 9 years, I've been working at and living at the intersection of somatic psychotherapy and plant medicine and neuroplasticity. And I see in my work and in my own life that some of the greatest transformations with the healthiest arc of integration really lie at that marriage between rewiring the brain and also the nervous system at the same time. And so I've been dedicating my entire life to this work, and it feels pretty awesome.
I love it. I think you did a fantastic job as a summary. That's very
Thanks.
well said. Yeah, but for it's not easy, but and knowing obviously a lot of your backstory or good chunk of it, yeah, it was really, really well done. What comes to mind when you were speaking about dance, or the question, I guess that was I was trying to hold back as you're explaining your backstory. It's just I wonder, do you have a different, not necessarily in words, but a different definition or appreciation for dance
Mhm.
now versus when you were a professional dancer? Like, how has that evolved or changed?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you for that question. Um, As a professional dancer, dance held a lot of meaning, um, as far as self-expression to a degree, and also as far as helping me cultivate my discipline, which I'm very, very grateful for. And there were particular moments where I got pretty severe burnout. Dancing, I was dancing between like 40 and 48 hours a week in middle school and high school, on top of being a full-time student. And so for me, in many ways, even though dance was a form of self-expression, it also felt like an obligation, and it felt like there was this tension I was constantly walking between that discipline and feeling free to express myself. And when I reshaped my relationship with dance as a true form of healing, I started leaning significantly more on the side of dance as a space for freedom and expression, kind of reclaimed movement as this really primal form of communication. When we think about it, that's the first ways that we communicated as human beings was through sound and through body language. And
Yeah.
so now dance and movement, even though I'm not on stage anymore, I've I dance every day. every morning, most every morning. If I don't dance, I feel the difference. But for me, it's really, really become just a tool to deepen my relationship with myself. And it's become a vehicle into freedom for myself and hopefully other people that I share it with as well.
Wow. Well, and I feel like it must have been maybe not knowing this at the time, but, like, almost like a precursor to what you do today in this like, I'm thinking of I think you shared this either you shared this in another interview or our first one, but something to the effect of one of the first moments where it's like you tapped into a whole other realm of feeling. I can't remember the technical term, but you were spinning or something like that,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
like, kind of time slowed down, colors were more vibrant and so forth, which I can't help but kind of think it seems like that was the intro to a lot of, like, some of the other work you even do present day, whether that's through, the breath or movement or psychedelics or like, whatever it is, you're really helping other people as well as yourself tap into these other states of consciousness.
Yeah. I remember that. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. It was when I was very young and I was in modern class and I was spinning. And
Okay.
yeah, time slowed down and it was kind of the first time I felt like movement actually took me to the self beyond the self. Um,
Yeah.
and that definitely comes into the work that I do now, which isn't just movement based, but it is all pretty body based. But I also use somatic parts work. I work with the brainstem in a process called deep brain reorienting, um, and hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming. There are a lot of kind of tools that are shaped around the body though as, like, the axis mundi and the center of
Mm,
everything that we do.
wow. So what just how do you start with someone? Like, what's your flow, whether you're working with a group or an individual? 'Cause you have so many different practices and modalities kind of at excuse me, at your disposal. Like, where do you even start?
Mhm. Just by getting on a call with them or if they're in Southern Oregon, meeting with them in person and honestly just listening and establishing care. Like, what I
Mm,
find is that practitioners can have a million and one tools, and that's great, that's super helpful, and I
yeah,
think the real healing comes with presence and care. So the first thing that I do is I sit down with someone or I sit with someone on a call like this and just establish presence and care and listen to where they are, listen to what their intentions are and potentially coming to do this work. Um, and listening to like the greatest dream for their life. Um, and then seeing if we're a good fit for me to potentially support them in getting there. And after that initial call, I also do a full medical intake. So I do a psychological and emotional evaluation, also see if people are on any sort of medication. Sometimes I'll work with their physicians. I also have a physician that I work with who's on my team. And then we, from there, do two preparation calls together and then they come and work with me in person for 3 days, 2 nights, and, we can go into that process if you want.
sure.
But then after they leave, we do 2 integration calls, and then I make myself available for 30 days post, just to ensure that they feel held and cared for, and that their integration is actually meaningful, and that people are really turning insights into actions in their daily life.
How have you given yourself presence and care over the last few years or so? Because I know you've been through different seasons of life and experiences and so forth. And, you know, uh, I mean, I think your methods of the work that you do has been pretty consistent, but just even trying different ways to express that and bring it to the world. I mean, it's not easy, I think people have sometimes these preconceived notions of the people that are helping others and so forth. It's like they're imperfect human specimens and don't have to navigate their own journey as well, which, is I think very false, and frankly, if you find someone like that, I mean, I'd be a little bit scared,
Yeah, really.
because we're all human and going through our own, journeys and so forth. So, yeah, like, what's been helpful for you, and what are some of the things you've had to navigate to get to this place?
It's a really big question. Um, the first thing that comes to me is when I was supporting building out a retreat center in Costa Rica that specializes in indigenous traditional medicines, and I got super, super, super burnt out doing that and started to realize that what I was sharing with guests who were coming, I wasn't actually living, and that felt really hypocritical, and I felt really incongruent, and so I had to draw some boundaries with myself
Mm,
and my work in order to come back to being a congruent human and facilitator. And the second thing that comes to me is also drawing boundaries in, like, my intimate relationships, which
sure.
is really hard for me. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and a recovering perfectionist, and, I really don't like disappointing people, and I've learned that the cost of self-abandonment is significantly higher, than not asserting the boundaries that I need in order to really protect and preserve my energy. I'm learning to pour my time and resources and love into people and spaces and ecosystems that are generative for me. So I'm no longer depleting and leaking energy into places that don't pour back to me. And
That's powerful.
yeah, it's been really, really big. So like this self-care, it hasn't been like rainbows and butterflies. I'm not doing like spa masks in my bedroom and like getting
Yeah,
massages, even though massages are great. Self-care for me has been like practicing and exercising discernment and
okay.
boundaries and walking away from people and things that do not serve my highest life. So that's
Have there
in
been
my
questions
self-care.
that have helped to set those boundaries or even check like, things that have been helpful to even checking in
Oof.
and to know when, "Oh, maybe I'm not respecting those boundaries," or what or even to identify them in the first place?
Totally. Coming back to the wisdom of the body. Because the body, it
Mm,
doesn't lie to us. The mind can rationalize its way into or out of anything. So I found, for example, I was in a relationship, and from the moment I met this person, actually, my body knew. Like my heart felt a little bit of resistance. My solar plexus started to feel kind of hollow, but my brain was rationalizing its way into the relationship because cognitively it made sense to say yes. But my body immediately knew that it was not the right place for me to put my time and my heart energy. Um, and even though I facilitate this work, I am still learning and growing and not perfect at
yeah.
it. And I think that's the beautiful part of the journey too, is like as I learn, we all learn. And as my clients learn, I learn. And it's like this really beautiful um reciprocity of this work. Um, but yeah, the tracking of the body's intelligence is the most important thing, I would say. So generally, if something is meant for us, I'll say me, because people have different somatic cues. But my somatic cues are if I feel like I'm leaning toward something and I feel like my posture is open, then that's a yes. If I feel like I'm
Mhm.
leaning away and my shoulders are caving in, that's a no for now, and it needs further investigation. Because a no can
Okay.
also be, is this coming from fear? Is this a trauma response? So we can dive a little bit deeper into the no. But the yes is usually, generally, a feeling of expansion in the heart, in the abdomen. And there's generally a sense of levity in that before the mind comes in with any sort of cognition around it.
Yeah, the mind is really man, it really messes with us. It's this beautiful thing, but this scary enemy at the same time when it took me a long time to realize that our minds are actually not designed to support our greatest desires and dreams and visions and so forth. Like, I wasn't taught that, it's designed literally to keep us alive, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're, on the path that you've set for yourself, or you're able to hear the cues. It's literally a safety thing,
Mm.
which is so outdated for most of us that aren't in, a true survival, like, physical situation. So it's like we can't, like, if you can't leave the mind on autopilot. It's just never gonna lead you to the place that you're trying to get to. So you have to have, some kind of, I guess, some fail-safe practices and interrupts in a way, which I love. If we can tune into the body for some of those cues, and then we're all different, like, but we have to be able to feel them,
Yeah.
and we've got to pause at least long enough to figure out what those cues are. So, what would be your suggestion? Is it just is there, like, kind of like a training period almost to, like, really pay attention to, okay, when I'm in this
Yeah.
expansive state, like, here's what's going on? Like, how do you work with people to figure those cues out?
Yeah. Some people have amazing interoception, which is like an ability to understand kind of the sensations of the body. Other clients that I work with need some support to develop that, and that's totally great too. And I find like the easiest kind of ways to start with people who don't have like an organic understanding interoception kind of guidance system is to start tracking how you feel when you're hungry. Like, we all get hungry, and we feel that
Mm,
in our body. Like, how does it feel to be hungry? For some people, the stomach feels kind of hollow, or the stomach will literally start grumbling, or
yeah,
people will get irritable and hangry. So, like, start to track those, like, little bit more kind of literal cues from the body. Same with when you're tired. What happens when you're tired? What happens inside of your system? What happens in the feeling behind your eyes, etcetera? And then from there, we'll go into a little bit deeper questions like what happens when you feel nervous? What happens when you feel anxious? A lot of the times, anxiety can cause like the stomach to feel like it's twisting, or there can be some kind of weird butterfly sensations that happen. All of that's interoception. And we build
yeah,
from there. Okay, what happens when you feel excited about something and it feels like a yes? Start tracking the sensations in the chest and the belly again. What happens when you're scared? What happens when you're stressed? Do you notice that maybe you're grinding your teeth at night? It happens to a lot of people. Usually, a stress response happens in the jaw. The brain stem is bracing for some sort of a threat. And throughout the day, people's jaws will literally tighten or they'll start to get migraines. A lot of people
yeah,
in my experience of working with them who are diagnosed with things like fibromyalgia, for example, once we start working to help their brainstem soften and they can start realizing the cues from their body of when their brainstem is tightening, their jaw is tightening, the back of the neck is tightening, the space behind the eyes is tightening. If they can catch those moments and help soften into those moments, no more migraines. So there are all of
fascinating.
these things that we can start to track, for various people's needs and desires and awareness and quality of life.
That's so helpful. I'm just as you're saying that, I'm gonna go through the exercise properly and really track over the next couple months or so, but just some of the things you've already mentioned, I'm like, yeah, I'm already drawing the linkages or the patterns,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's so helpful, it's so helpful. Where Hannah, where should we go from here? There's so many topics you and I can cover, so what feels intuitive for you to share next, or what path would you love to take?
I mean, we can go the super nerdy sciencey route, which I love. We can go the neuroplasticity route. We can go, yeah, we can go more
What do you think?
personal.
Yeah, well, so yeah, why don't we continue down the personal, then we'll geek out on some of the other stuff as well, because I think it helps ground, the work that you're doing, is you're using it yourself as well.
Yeah.
So, whatever you'd like to share, whatever has been helpful over the last, I mean, you pick the time period, but like where you've had to. Well, I wrote one thing down that maybe this will be helpful. This is from our last conversation. I was like, gosh, how did I not ask more questions when you actually said this? But you said so much of our life is dying to our past. And gosh, did that ever hit me hard? Because even, and some of the listeners know a little bit about the book that I'm working on. The big like revelation that I had this week in conversation with some of my uh teachers from the past in leveraging technology, of course, was this. I think it was Blackout Elk, an indigenous elder, and he said something to the effect to me that, like, just blew me off my chair, and it was right after I read your quote as well from our last conversation. He said, "I hope you realize that the Mark that came up with this book concept and idea is not the same Mark that is gonna write it, and you have to let that previous version die." I was like, "Oh, gosh." Yeah, that was
That's
my response too.
huge.
Because I've been going th I could feel the shift. I'm not the same person even when it started thinking about this book, and it's like I'm going through the journey that hopefully readers will go through as well.
Yeah.
And anyway, so you're the best person, I think, to talk about this kind of topic, and someone I obviously trust so much and just so much knowledge. So, I said a bunch of things, but there's some topics. You go
There's
wherever you wanna
some
go with that.
there's some fertile stuff in there for sure. But what I find actually fascinating, what's coming up around this the most is there's been seems to be this kind of obsession with not dying in today's society, and this obsession with longevity, which I'm all for. Like, I
Yeah,
love talking about the extension of telomeres, I love peptides, I love stem cells, all of that's
yeah,
amazing. And I'm also so much more interested in people's quality of life now
yeah,
and death in all the ways, like literal physical death, metaphysical death, ego death is so generative for life. Like, death is
yeah,
literally fertilizer for more life. And I feel like many humans are obsessed with this idea of like exponential growth. But if we look at the human body, exponential growth, when cells refuse to die, that's called cancer. So, how can we
yeah, that's
actually
interesting.
welcome death into our life as a friend, as a teacher, as an ally, as a companion in order to generate richer living, a more rich life, a more fertile life? So, how do we weave that into our daily life? How do we weave that into when we're tending to our garden outside? How do we weave that into our life when we're tending to our garden inside? How do we welcome death to generate more life? And so much of this work actually is about welcoming death. A lot of it is welcoming ego death when we are in non ordinary states of consciousness, with or without plant allies and sacraments. Many times people are going through a death process. But what's on the other side of that death? It's a rebirth. It's a rebirth into the next evolution of self. And so, yeah,
Well, how has
I
that
like,
shown up for you?
oh, so many ways. Oh, so many ways. Death has been a very present part of my life for most of my life, actually. One of my dear friends, transitioned when I was 11 years old, and she
Mm,
was 13 and had brain cancer, and, I've actually been with many people in their final moments as they're taking their last breath, and I'd say it's one of 2 of the most intimate moments we can have with anyone. There's being present for someone's birth into this world, and there's also being present when someone's taking their last breath and transitioning out of this world, and, um, so those experiences have honestly almost forced me to confront death in really big ways
yeah,
in my life, and I'm really grateful for that because, for example, the first time I sat with 5-MeO-DMT, which is also considered the God molecule, it's um, in its animal excretion form called bufo. Um, and this is also considered, I don't know if I said this, the God molecule, but this experience with this incredibly intelligent compound is really blissful when one is ready to die, when the ego is really ready to die and we're not attached to our identity or being an individuated being. It's, in my experience, heaven. For
Yeah,
those who are not ready to die, can be sheer terror to commune with the intelligence of this compound. And it's also
interesting.
profound medicine to work with the sheer terror around death. Because at the end of the
Wow.
day, like, surrender, letting go, non attachment are some of the most beautiful and important pillars that we can live a good life through and by. And the best way to embody those pillars, I believe, is through embracing death. So,
Yeah. Well, and there's at least in my study and research, it seems like basically every culture or belief system or kind of the ancient traditions and so forth all share that in common. It's like but somehow we've lost a lot of those teachings and those traditions. And to your point, like we fear death and we just have a kind of a bit of a warped perspective
yeah.
in where we've come from in that sense. And I've been doing I've just been so interested in this. Just I had someone on the show that shared this near death experience, and now I'm just like going off the deep end, exploring all of these stories. And there's just so many it's mind blowing how consistent what people recount when they go through that experience.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, and maybe this is a topic we can speak about, just knowing how everyone kind of experiences some sort of like pure love
Yeah.
and there's no time, and it's like that's one journey where we've got a whole bunch of other journeys kind of coming down the hatch, and we're all one. Like it's all so consistent across all of these stories people share.
Mhm.
I don't know, it just lightens things a little bit knowing because there's so much going on, like as mentioned at the beginning of the recording, that when you can take that other perspective. And I think also now all of a sudden it's like, well, you don't fear death. It's just like there's just part of that journey, and knowing how everyone that is then, comes back to this place and they're like, I don't really like, do I have to? Because it's so awesome over here in a way, right?
Mhm.
That I don't know, it just makes it feel a little bit lighter and gives me hope as well for, I think, just society in general, that it seems like there's like a new world developing in a way right now, live as we speak. And I think the more conversations we can all have like this and bring people and kind of build the tribe up, that I feel really happy about that. And that naturally, I mean, unfortunately, but naturally people that will be stuck in fear states and, plagued with disease and so forth will, um, that will be the old world. And,
Mm.
hopefully we continue in this higher kind of vibe, higher frequency state.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you thought about this at all, or am I crazy?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, it's a big reason why I moved into the middle of the forest in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's to live a present and regenerative life as much as possible. And I'm starting to host monthly community forums and gatherings here around like what does it actually mean to live in a good way with each other, connected to the
Mhm.
planet? What does like a consensus model look like for living in community? What does a governance model look like for living in community? What does ceremony and like rupture and repair cycles through ceremony look like in community? And I don't know what the answers to these
Yeah.
questions are, but like I love that you're spending so much time right now, like researching and studying and connecting with indigenous wisdom keepers that I really believe hold the key to like
Oh,
the
yeah.
next evolution of a healthy humanity, especially while it does feel like in other ways humanity is kind of descending into, and we don't have to get into the dystopian piece of it. But as that's happening, that contrast is happening, there are so many people who are really waking up. And I
Yeah,
also love what you shared too about speaking with people who've had near death experiences and kind of going through the same kind of or similar kind of journeys. And it reminds me of a couple of things. There's this book called Journey of Souls that really speaks to
okay.
that. It's amazing. And then it also reminds me of, have you heard of the Baha'i faith?
I Yes, but I know nothing about it.
It's super
The
amazing. If I were ever to
Okay,
have to convert to a monotheistic religion, I would convert to the Baha'i faith. Um,
okay, tell us a little bit about it.
well, so I have a lot of friends in the faith, and there was one piece, and I'm not gonna quote it perfectly, but the sense that I remember is that during gestation in our mother's womb, all we know during that time is inside our mother's belly, and it's the
Mhm,
amniotic fluid, and it's the warmth, and it's our mother's heartbeat and our heartbeat, and we get some, like, sounds and some kind of inputs from the outside world, but we have no idea what's on the other side of that.
yeah,
And then we go through the birth process, and then we come out as a baby, and we're in this whole huge world that we could not have predicted existed when we were in our mother's womb. And now we live our life in the womb of the earth, essentially.
mm,
And if we're open to it, we can get maybe little glimmers and signs of what life is beyond this womb, this life.
yeah,
But it's still like pretty hard to grapple what will happen
yeah,
after our death. But then we die, and that's our rebirth into whatever lies beyond this earth womb. And I just love that vision, and
oh,
it
yeah,
really
that's
stays with
nice.
me, and I feel most glimpses of that when I'm either utilizing movement and breath to access non-ordinary states of consciousness and or utilizing medicine allies. I feel like those are kind of our greatest teachers, to give us a little bit like, widen the aperture of what that glimpse to the other side can.
Well, I think all of it, it just s in present day, like, we need good belief systems and I don't just things to help us, like I think you said it really well, like widen the aperture and take kind of a higher view of everything that's going on. Because if you don't, you get sucked into the daily fear or this or that, and like we know where that leads. I mean, it leads short term, it leads to some serious mental health challenges, but then it leads to a bunch of other things and disease and so forth, right? That
Can you hear me, Mark?
um
Oh, there you
oh
are. You cut out. We need
oh
new
shoot.
belief systems is what I heard.
Yeah, well, not even new, we just need belief systems again. I feel like so many people have lost, uh, well, a lot like, when you were talking about, what you're doing in the forest, right, your new center, like, you said the word community, I think, like, 4 or 5 times, and we've lost so much of that, even
Yeah,
I think I was telling you a little bit about an interview to study, vision quests in indigenous cultures, and
yeah.
right off the top before going on any vision quest, and it's so funny having these interviews because they kind of, like, poke at me a little bit, like, yeah, oh, sometimes they actually use these words, but they'll be like, "Oh, it's such like, a American thing to say, like, you just wanna go
Ah,
on a 4-day experience and, like, solve all of whatever," right? It's like you're taking I can't remember who said this, I think it was, an Eastern philosopher of some sort said it's like you're coming with your laundry list or your shopping list of spiritual wants,
yeah.
and you're gonna do that in a few days, where these vision questions, like, well, it's years of the community observing and asking questions and seeing, "Okay, I think there's some things that are off here," or they're holding space, and, like, we need that community again. Like, we've seemed to have lost a lot of that. Did I lose you saying that, Hannah? Can you still hear me? Oh, no. Can you hear me, Hannah? There we
Yeah,
go.
try it again.
You're back.
Okay, so what I heard was that it's like a very kind of American thing to do, and you think you're gonna get all of your spiritual wants and, like, your checklist in just a few days, and then it cut out.
Okay. Yeah, and it was just let me just take a timestamp of this. I'll just restart really briefly, and then
Okay.
we'll wrap. So what I was saying, and for those listening, we've had a couple, cuts here. Just, I'll try to my best to stitch all this together. But in some of these interviews with some of, these teachers from the past, essentially, a lot of what they share is the fact that they're in community, even
Yeah,
an indigenous, vision quest, where you go 4 days onto a mountain and kind of you're not eating or drinking, you're solo. There's years of questions and prep prior that the community
yeah,
is observing, and that's what I love about what you're doing, um, in the forest at your location is that, like, you're cultivating that community again. Because, of course, like, the days that people are together are really powerful, but we need that to continue and so forth so that like, that's how we've all evolved essentially, and I'm seeing
exactly,
this across all cultures. It's the link that seems to keep it all together, and we've lost so much of that
exactly,
in how we're living now, right?
exactly. We're obsessed with hyper independence in a lot of our culture,
Yeah.
and we're missing the interdependent piece. And even from a nervous system perspective, like co-regulation is so important. We didn't come here to heal on our own. Like we came here to be in relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with life. And even in like retreat spaces where we're doing this work, a lot of the music is definitely an ally. The container where this work is being done is an ally. The medicines are allies, and the relational field of coherence that gets created in these spaces, like, that's the medicine for a lot of these experiences.
I guess where do we go from here in the sense of, like, how do we best navigate the current world that we're living in a way that's manageable so that, again, I think we can be on the
Mhm.
other side of living a thriving life and being a little bit lighter and less stressed and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the final piece of this conversation being community because I really, like, firmly believe we did not come here to heal and do this work and live this life alone. Like, we are pack animals. And what I find too in this work in a retreat context is the music that we use, the songs that we sing, the dance, all of that amazing ally to healing. The container, the physical space, super amazing ally to healing. The medicines that we use sometimes in these spaces, incredible allies for healing. The relational field of coherence that gets created when people gather, that's the medicine. That's the real medicine
Mm.
of all of this. And I think so much of humanity has become so obsessed with hyper independence and individualism that we've missed the interdependence that is so fundamental to our healthy survival as a species on this planet, and not just interdependence with each other but interdependence with mother earth. And I think some of the best things that we can do right now is something that you do, Mark, so well is like ask the big questions, ask the important questions, and then gather and let's talk about them and live in the questions and come up with the answers together. Let's do it together, like in consensus. And I've even had to dismantle some of my own subconscious programming around like, I always thought that I would build something like this with a partner. And I always had this vision of like the quote unquote king and queen archetype. Um, and just sharing that even at the risk of sounding absolutely ridiculous because it's honest. And I have
Yeah.
had to dismantle that because even inside of that, like, archetypal image in my head, there was a strange kind of hierarchy in that. And now I'm doing this on my own, but I'm not alone. I am
No.
so held and so supported by my community here, and I'm so supported by this land. And so now we get to gather in a non hierarchical fashion and we get to live inside of the big questions together. And what are those big questions? How do we live in community in a good way? How do we live with the earth regeneratively? What does a regenerative circular economy look like in community? How do we grow and serve our food in a good way? How do we heal in a good way? How do we hold each other accountable in a good way? And again, I don't know the answers to these questions, but I'm asking them with my community here, and I feel like that is a good start.
I think that's a beautiful start. It's, and you know me, I'm a sucker for really great questions. Those are the big ones, but those are great and beautiful questions to sit with, and I just I'm so thankful there are people like yourself, and of course there are others as well, but I know you really well, and just so grateful that you're on this journey, on this path, and providing these opportunities for people to sit with each other and, like, literally come back to who we are as humans. And we don't have to do this all alone. We don't have to figure out all of have all the solutions to the world's challenges alone, but we do have to start asking the questions. And I think we do have to do that together, because we are a community, whether we think we are or not, we are. And you just have you have so much to give, and so many beautiful modalities and practices and wisdom and teaching and experience to share. It's a blessing, Hannah. I hope you feel that in your heart, that what you're doing in this world is a real blessing, and it's an honor to know you, honestly, and I can't wait for our next conversation. I can't wait to visit your location in person. I've said this before. I've always wanted to go to Oregon, and
Yeah.
I've never been. This is a really good excuse to go. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Thank
where can people follow along and help support the journey and be there along your side?
mm, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for your big, beautiful questions and your big, beautiful heart, and for being such a beautiful part of my life, and I learned so much from you, and not just what you share with the world, but through how you embody your life, and so I'm really grateful
Thank
to
you.
have you in my life. And would love to have you here. So, yes, please, anytime. And if people want to learn more, they could just go to somayamethod.com.
Amazing, and I'll have that in the show notes. Hannah, thank you, and until our next conversation.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark.